Chapter 14. Brenda Wyatt was not a woman who permitted the intrusion of strange events into her life without making some effort to discover just what the hell was going on. There was a steely determination about her character which made most men duck for cover, except for those like Bedso, who were either masochists or intending to run once she turned and beckoned. The morning after the sword fight on the construction site, Brenda was dressing herself thoughtfully before going into the laboratory. Her mind swam with questions. What the hell were two grown men doing, fighting with a weapon that was as out of date as snuff boxes? It seemed they wanted to kill each other. Why didn't they just buy revolvers and shoot it out like any other respectable gangsters? Yet, somehow, this MacLeod was not of the gangster mold. Oh sure, she could be wrong. She'd been wrong before about people, but oh hell, what was the use of guessing? Perhaps they were just a couple of nuts escaped from the asylum. The big one, Jesus, yes, he looked maniac enough to fit into any psycho ward. If she could get a look at that file on Nash. Brenda pulled on her tights. Her pet cat looked on, flexing its claws. "You dare!" warned Brenda. "It's the only pair you haven't laddered." She threw a pillow at the animal and it slunk out, looking disgusted. At lunchtime, she left the lab and went up to Frank Moran's office. Moran was on the phone. "Yeah? Well, there's not a hell of a lot I can do about it, pal." He gestured for Brenda to take the chair, raising his eyes to heaven. She smiled. Moran put his hand over the mouthpiece of the phone. "You see what I'm up against?" She arched an eyebrow. Moran said, "His Vietnamese neighbor ate his dog." The hand came away and Moran sighed an "uh-huh" into the instrument. As he was talking, Brenda leaned over the desk, looking at a file. She lifted the corner of the cover. Moran's hand came out. "That's confidential." Then back into the phone. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. What else can I say? Dog is a delicacy out there. They keep cows as pets. You eat beef, don't you? The conversation went on, and eventually Moran put the phone down. "How are you? How's things over at Forensics?" "Dull," she replied. "How about some lunch?" "That's a good idea." Moran said, "Who pays?" She shrugged. "You know it's my turn, or you wouldn't have asked." He laughed. "And you wouldn't have come up here if you didn't want something. What is it?" She gave him a lopsided smile. "Frank, sometimes I despair of your faith in human nature. I came here to give, not to receive." He gave her a disbelieving look, and she put on an innocent expression. She said, "The hairs in the Moretti case." "Uh-huh." They matched up. He slammed a fist into his palm. "What did I tell you? Huh? Right again, Moran." He held open the door for her, and she walked through. When they were halfway across the office, Brenda cried, "Oh, damn! I left my purse." "What?" "You go on ahead, Frank. I'll meet you outside." "Okay." He called across the office. "Garfield, Brenda and I are going to lunch." Then he walked through the outer doors. Brenda went back into his office and opened the file on his desk. It was not the one she wanted. She looked around, quickly. There was a stack of them on top of the cabinet. She took them down and flicked through them. The Nash file was the third one down. Opening it up, she was confronted with a picture of MacLeod. Highlander, she murmured, alias Russell Nash. She flicked through the other documents and then replaced the file. The phone rang on the desk. That would probably be Frank, calling from downstairs to find out where she was. She let it ring and rushed out of the office. When she arrived downstairs, Frank said, "What kept you?" "Oh, I had to make a call. Sorry." He nodded. "Well, I tell you what. I'm going for the lobster today. Can you stand it?" "Not puppy dog?" she queried. "I understand it's all the fashion in downtown restaurants at the moment." He made a face at her. While Brenda was doing her investigating, the object of her inquiries was doing some research himself into her background. He had been to the public records office at City Hall and spent the morning poring over worthless information. One small, interesting piece had still to be followed up. Her father, Peter Wyatt, had been, still was, interested in ancient weapons. MacLeod went to the library and picked up the fiche catalogue. He took out the appropriate fiche and put it into the viewer. Wendell, Williams, Wyatt, a whole string of them. But not Peter Wyatt, someone more interesting. Brenda J. Wyatt, a metallurgical history of ancient sword making. MacLeod went to the shelf indicated by the code on the fiche. There were 2 copies. He took one out, noting with interest the photograph of a slightly younger-looking Miss Wyatt on the dust cover. He took the book back to his apartment and began reading it. A quarter of the way through the first chapter, he raised his eyes from the page. The last thing he had read was, "The balance of the weapon." He recalled a conversation that had taken place 5 centuries ago. "Sometimes, MacLeod," Ramirez had said, "the sharpest blade is not enough." He had taken his own blade out of its sheath and put it across one finger. Balance. In the tropical fish tank, one of the guppies disturbed the surface of the water with a flick of its tail.